how to make this bracelet to match the earrings that we made in the last tutorial. So this is what the bracelet looks like. I will show you what it looks like on my wrist, and we will go from there, look at what this project will take bead-wise, and get started. And this is what it looks like on the wrist. It's very pretty. And this is what the earrings look like. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, for this project, you are going to need 11/0 and 15/0 seed beads. You will also need, and these are Toho, and they're both the galvanized aluminum silver tone Toho seed beads. And then you will need 2 colors of 4mm bicone crystals. I am using Swarovski for both. This one is a Montana blue. This one is an aquamarine. You will also need a toggle clasp. I'm just using this little silver tone fancy toggle. Then you will need a size 10 beading needle and 8-pound Fireline. Now, because we are using size 15/0 seed beads, if you would like, you can use a size 12 beading needle and 6-pound Fireline. I did get a comment when I made the earrings from somebody that the needle and thread would not go through their 15/0s. With different finishes and with different brands of 15/0s, a size 10 and 8-pound Fireline just might be too big. So if you want to use a size 12 and 6-pound Fireline, that will work just fine. Let's go ahead and get started. To start this project, we will be making separate components. So for our first component, we will put onto our needle about a full, probably 2 wingspans of 8-pound Fireline or 6-pound, depending upon what you have chosen to use. Now, for the first one, we will use that much. For each component after that, we will use just an arm's length. So start with your first component and put on a nice long length of Fireline. And then you will put onto your needle 4 of your color A, which for me will be the Montana blue. Put 4 of the color A 4mm bicones and 4 of your 11/0 seed beads. And alternate the seed beads between the crystals. Start with an 11/0, finish with a 4mm bicone. And then just bring these down to the end of your thread. And you don't have to leave a long tail for this. We won't be using it, just enough to hold on to as we start our project. So then come back up through a couple of the beads, go through an 11/0 and maybe 2 of the crystals like this from the tail side, and hold on to your tail and pull these beads around like this. Now we're just going to sew through this once, the beads that we haven't gone through yet. Because if you sew through these too much, then you'll have a difficult time getting through the 11/0s as we progress through the project. So just sew up through there, and then this is where my tail is. So I am now going to sew down to this 11/0 seed bead here, just to get away from my tail and to secure my little circle that I've made. So this is what I have right here. Now I'm going to start my next step through this little 11/0 seed bead. Now we're going to put little netting stitches over this, and yes, I'm saying little a lot. Somebody counted them in my last video, how many times I said little. I'm sorry, but these beads are little. So anyway, pick up 2 15/0 seed beads, then an 11/0 seed bead, then 2 15/0 seed beads. You're coming out of this 11/0 seed bead here, you're going to skip over the bicone, and then you're going to go into the next 11/0 seed bead, like so. Then you will do the same thing again, and you'll do this all the way around your base unit. If you want more detailed instructions, you can refer back to the earrings. I'm going to do this fairly quickly since we've already done this on the earring video. So 2 15/0s and 11/0 and 2 15/0s. You're coming out of this 11/0, you're going to go into the next 11/0 seed bead. Hop over the crystal and bring this netting down over the top of the crystal. At this point, you're going to have to keep adjusting your tension and then pick up 2 15-0s and 11-0 and 2 more 15-0s onto your needle. Coming out of this 11-0 here, go into the next 11-0. Just ignore your tail, pull it aside, and come through the next 11-0, like so. Then pick up 2 more 15-0 seed beads and an 11-0 and 2 15-0s. And on this one, we're going to come through the 11-0 seed bead on the other side of the crystal and both the 15-0s and the next 11-0 on top of the next crystal. So this is what it should look like. Just come right through all these beads and pull on your thread. Now tighten your tail and tighten your working thread so that everything's laying fairly neatly. Now you're coming out of this little 11-0 here. We're going to go through just the 11-0s on top of each crystal, making sure that you're going to the next 11-0 on the side that your thread is coming out of. So you don't want to cross over the top of your bead and pick up this 11-0. Come to this 11-0 here and pick it up and pull your thread through. This will kind of draw everything on top of the crystals. Then go to the next 11-0 and pull the thread through it. And then through the next 11-0 in line, and then back through the one you started in. I know my thumb is kind of covering everything. I apologize, but I really can't hold on to it any other way. So this is what it should look like so far. They're not drawn together at all. So I am going to go through the little 11-0s on top again. And then back through them again, just all the way around until I pull them nice and tight and neat. Until I get back to the one I started in here. And I'm just going to arrange my unit because it's kind of crunching up here. Okay. So I've secured these on top and try to make everything nice and neat. There we go. And that's what that should look like. Now I'm going to sew down through these 15-0s that I'm right next to. So I'm coming out of this 11-0 here. I'm going to go down through these 15-0s right here. And it's tight, so you may have to go through one at a time. If you can get through both of them, that's great too. So I've captured both of those little 15-0s. And yeah, I said little again. Jeez. Okay, so I'm coming out of these 15-0s here. Now I'm going to go through this 11-0 down between the crystals and then into my next crystal and exit it, like so. And this is what you should have. And then we are going to pick up our color B crystal, and then a color A again, and then a color B, like this. We're coming out of this side of the crystal. We're going to go into the opposite side of the same crystal we're exiting from, right here. I'm going to back off just a little bit, and then I am going to cut my tail off some here. I'll leave it a little long so that it doesn't slide through yet, and I can burn it down and seal it. But it's in my way, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Now I'm coming out of this crystal here. I'm going to go into the next 11-0, and then into the next crystal, avoiding the 11-0 on the other side, and pull my thread through, like so. Now I'm going to pick up a color B, a color A, and a color B, and I'm coming out of this side. I'm going to go into the opposite side of the crystal and pull the beads down. Then we will go through the 11-0 right next to the crystal we're coming out of, and then into the next crystal, avoiding the 11-0 on the other side of it. And again, we will pick up a color B, a color A, and a color B crystal, like this. We're coming out of this side of the crystal, we'll go into the opposite side of the crystal that we're coming out of. Pull them down and turn. And again, go into the 11-0 right next to where you're exiting the crystal, go into the next crystal and just the crystal, avoiding the 11-0 on the other side. Pick up color B, color A, color B crystal, and then go into the opposite side of the crystal, right there, and pull. And now we will go into the 11-0 here, and then we're going to go up into the new color crystal that we put on right here. So let's get close so you can see where I'm at. I'm coming out of the 11-0 in our first base unit here. Now I'm going to come up into the crystal right here. And instead of sewing this direction, I am now going to sew the opposite direction. I will pick up an 11-0, a color A crystal, and an 11-0. And I'm coming out of this crystal here. I'm going to go to the next crystal and down through the top of it, and then into the 11-0 in the middle of the crystals, right here. And I will pull my thread through after I tangle it on everything, right there. So now I'm coming out of the 11-0 in the middle here. I need to sew up into this crystal here. So I'm going to go up into it. Then I will sew down in or over into this crystal on top here, and then down into the next lighter colored crystal, and then down into the 11-0 between the new units we put on right here. Now I have to position myself into the lighter colored crystals here so that I can put another crystal on top. So I'm going to come up into this crystal here. I hope I was in frame. Let me back off again so that I will stay in frame. Right there. And we will put an 11-0, a color A, and an 11-0. Come onto our needle, just like this, and we're coming out of this crystal here. We're going to go over into the one next to it, and then down through the 11-0 seed bead in our first units of crystals. Pull it through, and now we have to sew up through this unit to get over to this side. So we're going to sew up through the little crystal here, over through the top crystal, down into the side crystal again, and then down into the 11-0 seed bead. Now we need to get ourselves positioned to the top of this, between these two units here, so that we can join them together. So we will come up through this crystal, pick up an 11-0, and then a color A, and then an 11-0, and we're coming out of this crystal. We're going to cross over to this crystal, down through the 11-0 seed bead, then come up through the crystal here, move through this unit so that we can join the unit next to it together. So just go all the way through this entire unit and down into the 11-0 seed bead, and then up into the crystal, and again we will join these two units together with an 11-0, a color A crystal, and an 11-0. Coming out of this crystal, we're going to go over to this crystal and through the 11O between the original units, or crystals anyway. Then come up through this side crystal. And this is where we're exiting this little side crystal here. We're going to come up into the 11O right on top of it, and the crystal, and the 11O on the other side of the crystal. We are going to now place 11O seed beads all the way around between the crystals and the 11Os that are already there. So I'm coming out of this 11O, I picked up an 11O onto my needle, I'm going to go into the next crystal and exit the crystal and pull this 11O down. Now I will pick up an 11O and I'll go into the 11O, the crystal, and the 11O here and place an 11O between the little missing spots. So everywhere there's a little gap between the 11Os and the crystals, we will place an 11O. So we're coming out of this 11O. Let's go into the next crystal, pick up an 11O, go through the 11O, the crystal, and the 11O. Turn. And just continue the process all the way around until you have no more gaps between the 11Os and the crystals. Okay, when you get all the way around, go ahead and go through until you are coming out of a crystal that is on top of one of the parts, one of the cross of the seed beads. So you don't want to be on top of the crystal here, you want to be on top of the seed bead part. That was a great explanation, wasn't it? So you can see how we have a cross here. Go over to the crystal that's on top of the cross. Goofball me. Oh well. Okay, I'm having fun all by myself down here. I'm going to sew all the way up here. And then I'm going to exit this little crystal right here because it's on top of the cross. And I'm going to make another unit. Now this is our first component. So in our first component, we're going to go ahead and make a connection for our clasping. So we're going to make the connection that we will also use between each unit. But since this is the end, we can do it without adding a unit to it as we do this. So we're going to go ahead and pick up an 11O seed bead. We're coming out of this crystal here. We'll pick up an 11O seed bead, a crystal, an 11O seed bead, and a crystal. I'm doing this all in my color A, 11O seed bead, crystal, and 11O seed bead. And this is exactly how we did the earring and where we put our ear wire on. But this time we're going to do this and then we're going to connect a clasp. So you will have 3 4mm rounds and 3 11O seed beads. Start with the seed bead, end with the seed bead, alternate them between the crystals. You're coming out of this side of this crystal. We're going to go into the other side of the crystal. And we're going to pull this down. And then we will sew around this entire little unit that we just added, making sure not to miss any of the beads, like so. And come through the connecting crystal, pull it all around nice and neat, and then you will exit through an 11O seed bead and begin your netting all the way around, just like we did the middle unit, the very first unit we did. So you'll pick up 2 15O seed beads and an 11O seed bead and 2 15Os. And you will skip over this crystal, go into the next 15O, and go all the way around the entire unit, just like we did the first one, and connect them together. And we'll be back. Alright, so I have put my netting around these 3 crystals. Now this crystal is connected to the main body of my work. I am going to go ahead and put my knitting on anyway, right over the top of it. So I'm coming out of this 11-0 here. I'm going to pick up 2 15-0 seed beads, and 11-0 and 2 15-0s, and I'm going to hop over this crystal and go into this 11-0 here. Now, there are 2 on either side of the crystal right here also. So you want to make sure you go into the original one between your beads, or between your crystals. Then go up into the 2 15-0s and the 11-0. I can't get the 11-0, so I'm going to go up. I'm coming out of this crystal here. Let's get real close so you can see really well. We are coming out of this 11-0, going up through these 2 15-0s. Pull your beads through, like so, and they'll just lay on top of this crystal kind of loose. Then you'll come up into the 15-0, or the 11-0, excuse me, on top of the crystal here, right here. Now, we're going to bring these little netting pieces up. So we're coming out of this 11-0 here. We're going to go into the next 11-0 on the side where the thread is coming out. So don't cross over the top of your bead, go this way. And then pick up the next 11-0s on top of each crystal. And then connect back to the one that you started in, right here. Pull them together and sew through them again to tighten them. There, I have to do one at a time. So, as you pull each one, you're going to have to arrange them so that the 15-0s and the 11-0s lay nice and neat on top of your work. Sometimes they want to push under and do funny things, so you just have to arrange them and make them look pretty. Go all the way around until you come out of the bead you started in. Here. Like so. Once you've gotten them arranged the way that you like them, you're coming out of this little 11-0 on top here. We're going to go into the 15-0s right next to them, right next to the one you're coming out of, and exit these 15-0s, come through the bicone on top here. And we are going to add clasping to this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pick up 2 11-0 seed beads and a crystal, and then we're going to drop them down like so, and we're going to pick up an 11-0 and drop it down. So you've got 2 11-0s, a crystal, and an 11-0. You're then going to go through your clasp and bring it down. Now we are going to pick up an 11-0, and then we're going to go through the crystal like so. So this is what you should have. Let's get real close. You pick up 2 11-0s, go through and then pick up a crystal, pick up an 11-0. Go through the clasping, pick up an 11-0, and then go through the crystal. Then you will pick up 2 11-0s. And you will go through the other side of the crystal we started in, like so. Pull them down till they're nice and neat, like this. Now we're going to sew around this entire thing again. So go ahead and come up through your 11-0s, your crystal, the 11-0 here, then the clasping, then the 11-0, the crystal, and the 2 11-0s on this side. And do that a couple of times until you feel as if your clasping is secure, and we'll be back. Okay, so now I'm coming out of the crystal after securing my clasping on. I noticed when I went off camera that I had a 15-0 seed bead mixed in with my 11-0s on top here, so I had to take it all apart and fix that. That's a risky run when you use the same color beads in both your 15-0s and 11-0s. At least that's the risk I run because I don't pay close enough attention. Sometimes I mix them up. So just be aware of that. And then coming out of this crystal here, go through the 11-0 here. We're just going to sew all the way down to the bottom of our component so we can get it ready to join our other components. So sew all the way down. I'm sewing through this 11-0 here. I'm going to come through the crystal here. And then we're going to sew all the way through the outside beads. So all the 11-0s and all the crystals until we come down to the very most bottom crystal. And that's where we will connect our next components. So get your thread all the way to the bottom here. We'll exit this component right here. And then we will start with connecting our other components. So let me show you what I did off camera. I made 4 components. So after I made the round part of my component, I just sewed around and tied a knot and tied them off and cut off the thread. Now, you won't want to make this part on any of the other components, just on your first component. You'll put your clasping on, you'll bring your thread to the bottom, the one with the long thread, then make your other components, and then come back to your original unit that you made with your long thread. Then, what we will do is we will pick up, let me grab some 11-0s here. We will pick up an 11-0 seed bead and a color A crystal and an 11-0 seed bead, and then our next component. Now you want to make sure that you line them up so that your center little crosses are the same way. Unless you want them all different directions, you can do that too. But I think I want mine to be all the same way. So I'm going to find the crystal that allows my unit or my component to lay the same way this one is laying. And I'm coming out of this crystal here. I picked up an 11-0, a crystal, and an 11-0. I am going to then go into this crystal on this unit right here and pull it through. Just like so. And then I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and a color A crystal and an 11-0. I'm coming out of this crystal on this component. I'm going to go into this crystal on this component with this on my needle. And pull them down like so. Then I will sew back through this entire joint again just to secure it. Keep sewing until you get all the way around to the one that you started in, like so. Now I am going to sew down into this crystal right here. I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to exit this crystal here. Or actually, I'm just going to sew into the 11-0, excuse me. Sew into this first 11-0 here, and we're going to start putting our little netting crosses on these units here. The only thing that is different is you have to watch, because you have 11-0 seed beads on either side of the crystals that are connected to the components. You want to make sure that you don't go through them. You want to stay in the beads that are between the crystals in the unit here in the middle. Don't go up into the side ones. And you're going to skip over the top of the units just like we did on our very last netting on our connection for the clasping. We're going to do that on these that are connected to the components. So let me show you what I mean. We will pick up 2 15-0 seed beads and an 11-0 seed bead and 2 15-0 seed beads onto our needle like so, And we're coming out of this 11-0. We're going to go into this 11-0 seed bead right here between the crystals we just added, right there. And pull the netting down. Then we're going to go over this crystal into this 11-0 right here. So we're going to pick up two 15-0 seed beads, an 11-0, and two 15-0 seed beads. And we're going to hop over this crystal and make sure we go into the right 11-0, the 11-0 between the connection units, between these crystals here. Then we will turn and do the same thing again. Do a 15-0 seed bead, two of them actually, and an 11-0 and two 15-0s. We'll skip over this crystal, go into the next 11-0 here, and pull. Then we need to go over the top of this crystal, so we will pick up two 15-0 seed beads, an 11-0, and two 15-0s. We'll skip over the top of it, go into the 11-0 on the other side of the crystal. I'll get my fingers arranged here. Go into this 11-0, and if you can, slide up the 15-0s at the same time. Right here. And then go into the 11-0 on top. And now you will begin sewing all the 11-0s on the peaks here together. So we're coming out of this side. We're going to go into this 11-0 right here. Pull it down. And I'm going to turn my work and go into the next one. And pull it down. And go into the next one. And then over to the first one I started in. Here. Pull them together as best as I can, and then I'm going to sew through the entire thing again, pulling each time to tighten my embellishment up so it looks nice and neat. Go all the way down until you get to the bead you started in, right here. And now make sure it looks good. We will sew down these two 15-0 seed beads right here underneath the 11-0 we're coming out of. And just exit the second 15-0 like so. And then we are going to sew into this crystal. So go into the crystal on the second component. And now you are in position to sew the outside to get down to the next crystal that we will join our next component to. So just start sewing down all the outside beads, the 11-0s and the crystals. Don't miss any. All the way down until you get to the very bottom crystal in the center of your component. And then you will begin making another connection for your next component. We are exiting this crystal here after sewing all the way down. So what we're going to do now is we are going to connect our next component. We will pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a color A crystal, and an 11-0 seed bead. We're coming out of this side of our crystal. We're going to go into the same side of the crystal on the next unit, making sure that we've lined up our component so that it lays the same way our previous components do. And then we will come down through the same side of the crystal that we're exiting from on the opposite unit and pull these beads down and pull the component close to the other component, like so. Then you will pick up an 11-0 seed bead and your color A crystal and an 11O seed bead, like so. You're coming out of this crystal on the new component, go into the crystal on the same side in the previous component, avoiding the 11Os on either side of that crystal, and pull the unit together. Now we will sew around this entire unit, securing it. Once we have sewn it around it and secured it, we will then put our netting on and then sew down to the crystal on the bottom of the unit so we can begin connecting our next component. So I am here now. I have secured my connection. I'm going to go through this 11O seed bead here and exit, and I'm going to begin putting my netting on just like I did on the previous unit. Once I have the netting complete, I will sew down to this crystal and I will begin to connect my next component. Once you have connected all 4 of your components, then we will be back and we will do the clasping on the other side of the bracelet. Okay, so I have joined my 4 components to my first one with the clasping, and I am coming out of this little bicone crystal right here at the very end after I finished connecting this component and then sewed down. And now I'm going to add my very last little component so that I can add my other end of my clasp. So I'm coming out of this side of the crystal. I've picked up 3 bicone crystals and 4 11O seed beads, just like this, onto my needle. I'm coming out of this side. I'm going to go into the opposite side, and I'm going to do the same thing I have been doing. I'm going to secure this entire unit by sewing all the way around it, and then put my netting on it and join them together on the top. Then I'll sew down the 15 O's and out the outside bicone crystal, and we'll add the clasping. Let me secure this real quickly. And then after I come through this crystal here, I'm going to come through one of these little 11O seed beads right here, just like this, and start my netting and join it together. After we have done that, we'll be back and we will attach the clasping. Okay, so I finished my netting on top. I sewed down through the 2 little 15O seed beads over here and through this bicone crystal on the end. And now I'm going to attach my clasping. But as you can see, on this end of the toggle, the loop lays differently than on this end. This one, it's kind of laying vertically. On this one, it's flat against the table. So I'm going to change it a little bit, because if I try to do it with the 2 11O seed beads this way, it doesn't lay right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 2 11O seed beads and a bicone crystal, and then 1 11O seed bead, like so, just to kind of protect my thread from that crystal. And then I'm going to go through my clasping and pull it down, and then I'm going to go through both the 11O and the crystal right here. Let's see, maybe I wasn't in frame. So I picked up 2 11Os, a crystal, and an 11O, I went through the clasp. Now I'm coming back through the 11O and the crystal only, not the other 2 11Os, and I'm going to pull my clasp down. I don't want to pull it really tightly flush because I want to get back through it again, but I want to pull it down to my work like this. And then I'm going to pick up 2 more 11O seed beads. So all we're doing is eliminating 1 11O seed bead up here and coming through the 11O and the crystal instead of the way we did it on the top, just a little bit, or on the other side. It's just a little bit different. Now we're coming through this crystal, so we're going to pick up 2 11O seed beads, and we're going to go through the opposite side of the crystal we're connecting to, like so. And that's what that should look like. Now we're going to sew back through this entire thing a couple of times, and this way your clasping will lay correctly. So go ahead and sew through this, secure it, sew through your work, and or just secure it, sew through this crystal. And so I secured my clasping, went down through the unit, and through the bicone crystal and through my work making half-hitch knots and tying my work off, sewing a little more, and then cut my thread off. This is what the finished product looks like. Now you could, and I had debated whether I wanted to or not. I like the way this looks. It's simple and clean, and I like that. And it looks pretty on the wrist. However, if you wanted to, because these components are just a little bit flimsy, you could sew up, after you come out of your bicone crystal, you could sew up into these little 11 O's right here. So you'd sew all the way through until you exit these two 11 O's. Then you could add like two 15 O's and a couple of crystals and two 15 O's and slide back through this side and go all the way down the entire bracelet, adding an extra embellishment of crystals to hold them into place a little bit better. But like I said, this works, it functions, and it's pretty. And I kind of like to keep it a little simple, so I'm going to quit here. But there are possibilities if you decide that you want to do a little more. And let's put this on. And this is what it looks like on my wrist. And it's very pretty. And here's the clasping. That turned out pretty too. So anyway, that is what this looks like, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun making one. Bye-bye.